Everybody, welcome back to Human. I'm Joe Klemczewski with Jeff Stucke, and I may let you title this series. I didn't know what we were going to talk about, and you said it's going to be the How to Get Laid series, something like that.
Jeez, I thought, okay. Yeah, we'll call it that.
No,
Uh,
I mean, I'm definitely a little bit more on the old-fashioned, like keep it a little bit more tame level.
well, it seems like a lot of, as you and I were discussing, like how to be liked or how to attract or influence
That
people,
sounds way better.
those kinds of things. Um, so if we want to call it how to be attractive to other people, is that you want
So, in the biz, we
to?
call it sex signaling and mate selection. What do you
Okay.
guys call it?
Well, we don't call it that. Uh, but
Nobody
we,
comes in asking for that. I would like some training on sex signaling and mate selection.
and I think it goes beyond that. I think it overlaps. Obviously, motivation being different to a degree, but I mean, survival's survival. Aligning with women, obviously for procreational purposes, but aligning with other men for protective purposes. I mean, strength in numbers. So I think there's some overlap in terms of how we become attractive to other people, regardless of what, the root motivator is.
Well, good. You came over to my camp. That's kind of where I wanted. I was going to use the word attraction or attractive in the title, because that to me is kind of the core. And you mentioned that this first episode in the series should be titled Vulnerability. So I feel like the name Brene Brown may come up a couple times. That's kind of the thing that made her famous.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. Are you a
No?
fan? I don't.
Anybody who just kind of has a point that makes their career and then they just feel like they have to embed inside of that for decades, I do get a little bored. But her initial premise, I mean, I think this was a TED Talk 15 or more years ago
Dude.
that
Now,
kind
the
of,
initial TED Talk, I will say, that was like, and you talk about like the Jimmy Buffett of like taking one hit and turning it into an empire. I don't mean to be. I just I found her to be kind of one note. I found it to be kind of more romantic. I don't know.
I
But
think I think she
anyway,
just opened the conversation. And one of the
that's a good
things
way to
that
put it. Yeah.
one of the things that I think came out of her movement was a phrase or an ideology of I am enough. Like I can be vulnerable, which means I'm going to be comfortable taking risks, being myself. I think even the movement to become authentic as a cliched term probably emanated from her work. And so it was definitely a big step in women's empowerment. And I would say, I mean, she is a social scientist, and so she definitely went in that direction, giving women more of the just the intrinsic power to decide on their own terms who they wanted to be, who they wanted to date, how to show up in the world, regardless of what we're talking about, marriage and intimate relationships. It was just literally all about becoming comfortable with being wrong or being seen not at your best. And I think that's kind of the heart of vulnerability. So I do think she nailed that, at least as a genesis point.
All right. I mean, I may embrace that. Although the part that I would take massive exception to it is that if you are doing vulnerability right, there ain't a fucking thing that's comfortable about it. Like it ain't
Well,
there.
yeah, well, I think she would agree that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Like you
Right.
have to constantly, be willing to be uncomfortable. Can I give you
Yeah,
an example real quick?
of course.
My wife and I were at a total little dive bar. I mean, this is where if you want the cheapest beer in town, this is where you go. And it is just right on the side of a highway. Phenomenal place. The people were great. But it was a long night of music, 7 or 8 different bands. And a particular woman got up to sing. And you could tell she was kind of working out the kinks. She had not gigged that much. And so she's great voice, but kind of working out how to do that while playing keys and that sort of thing. And from the back of the bar, this guy just walked up, and he was the only one. Everybody was sitting at tables. He came up just almost 5 feet away from her, where there ostensibly would be, a dance floor or a place to move. And he just sat there and stared at her, mouth agape, and was just oogling her and like clapping appropriately, cheering her on, saying, and his eyes just had that look. Like I turned to Tracy and I whispered in her ear, I said, "Look at that guy. Like he is falling in love head over heels, like on the spot." And in the terms of sociology or anthropology, like you do see that. Like oxytocin is flooding his brain. He's like, "This is the one." It's gonna be a rom-com moment right there. But his whole body just glowed with that feeling of this guy has one thing on his mind and he wants this to be his soulmate.
And what happened?
I don't know.
You
It was just that
fucking
moment. I'm just taking now
did you
social.
watch the rest of the like did
Actually,
and
we did leave shortly after that. We left and he was still up there. So who knows? They may be like married right now. I don't know.
or like she finally called security and was like, please get this
But
guy.
that's the whole, sex signaling mate selection. I mean, she was probably oblivious, could care less. She's just trying to survive the set. But I mean, he was attracted to her, and that's part of what I love to see because that's a magnification. I think any of us who have felt something like that just click instantly. The again, all of those cliches come to mind. Like that's real. That is that
You've had that moment.
imprinting. Yeah, yeah, that imprinting in your brain, the serotonin, the dopamine, the oxytocin. It
Here
is
I
a
go. I'm going to go up and I want to hear about the Joe Klemczewski equivalent of this event.
when I met Tracy.
No,
What?
whenever who if it were Tracy, I mean, I don't know who you like were drunk in love with to where you're up there like I'm the only person at this concert. Like,
Well, so let's make it kind of. I'll switch over to kind of a same-sex platonic relationship, and I
okay.
think we might have mentioned this at one of our previous series. But when you and I met, and then we went and had lunch at your invitation, we started a friendship. And I remember both of our wives kind of being weirded out by it because at one point my wife would say it's like you're texting a junior high school like sweetheart because you and I would just be like texting each other and giggling and joking and just like there was some kind of an infatuation moment where like we found a friend. Did you remember that at all?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, it was way more powerful for you than it was.
See, I was being vulnerable there. See,
I know. I know. And I tried to
and you
match
just
you, and I
trashed
was
me.
like,
You just
I
ran me
can't do
over.
it. Like I'm sweating down my back. No, yeah, I would say that that's probably yes. Um, so as you and I, just to kind of shift gears a little bit, as you and I were talking about attraction, attractive, and just kind of as I kind of thought about that process, because I do a lot of work in this area, particularly because just of many circumstances that we find ourselves living in, this is a particular struggle for men of younger men because they just they've been in this vacuum of video games and porn and their mother's basement and not having to walk up to a girl, a woman, and say, "Do you like me?" and risk having their soul crushed. But then also, and I think we've covered this probably a couple of different times, is good men don't really know where the assertive aggressive line is anymore. It's like such a like I don't want to be I want to be assertive. I don't want to be aggressive. I don't know where that is. And so we kind of just get stuck in this almost paralysis of not knowing where that is. So it's a topic of a lot of conversation. And so I have I kind of and we'll focus on vulnerability, but I'll kind of start with the beginning, but I see three elements working together at the same time. First vulnerability, number two is authenticity, and then number three, we can change this. This is the term that I use, but value added. And it's a perpetual loop. Vulnerability leads to some data. Do I connect with the world the way that I think I connect with the world? In my mind, I'm fucking awesome. But when I go out and interact with the world, am I getting that same level of feedback, which leads to authenticity? Once I start feeling more like a whole person, then I'm seeking approval less and more alignment. Does if I'm if I'm in a dating situation, do we align? So I shift from how do I get her to like me to do we align? Similarly, male to male relationship, you know, not so much, oh, that guy seems really cool. How do I garner his attention? But do we align? And then that is that's an infinite loop, which leads to more. Once I find alignment, then that leads to increased vulnerability. As my vulnerability increases, I get more input, which leads to greater authenticity. Now I have more confidence of the value that I have to add. I seek greater alignment. So this just perpetuates over and over and over again. And why I think vulnerability is so key is, my two all-time favorite quotes. My first favorite quote is, "The truth is like a fine wine. It has a taste that does not appeal to children." And the second, which is actually my first, is, "The eye cannot see itself."
Hmm.
The eye never sees itself. It has to see a reflection of itself. And so any any journey of self-discovery cannot happen within a vacuum. I have to have feedback because the eye cannot see itself. And so for me, vulnerability is, first of all, taking the risk of moving from the known, this is how I see myself, into the unknown, is it congruent with how other people experience? And so
And
that's go.
well, I was going to say, I think that's one of my favorite elements of social psychology is that infinite loop that I exist with other people and I am constantly getting feedback. Every single interaction we have every day is refining that balance somehow, our own interpretation of ourselves. And I think that is certainly the psychological element of attraction. There's more, it maybe start biological. There are certain social elements. There are even your uh, intellectual goals. I am this old. I want a family. I want children. Here are the things I have to consider. You can get kind of into the neocortex. But this is one area when you look at the psychology or the science of attraction, it's one of the places I think that there are more competing theories than any other part of psychology. All the way back to just the evolutionary utility theories. You've heard things like why would a male peacock have these wild crazy feathers that take so much evolutionary energy to create if there's no utility? Doesn't keep them any warmer. It's, may or may not be for kind of a shield of defense even visually. But more than anything, what they have found in studies is that that is what the female peacocks are attracted to because it does give a theoretical vibe that wow, that is a strong partner. That is the biggest, strongest partner because he has the biggest tail plume. And so that is just purely evolutionarily for attraction. And I heard a quote today uh, into kind of theories of leadership, and I think one of our presidents even said this quote: "Most people are attracted to strong and wrong rather than right and weak. In other words, most people would follow a leader who's completely obliviously wrong as long as they're confident and strong. So again, there's this element of evolutionarily physical prowess. Like you are somebody who can take care of me, and again, evolutionary psychologists would point to the other maternal values or characteristics of a woman who would be a good parent, etc. But then you get into social exchange theories, the commodity theory of love, all these things where we're more cerebrally interpreting a potential partner. So I would like to. I'm going to turn the table on you and say when is a time when you just knew, like, I am super attracted to this person. What made you so? And then how did you handle that feedback loop of, am I enough? Am I worthy of this person? Am I attracting her as well?
Um, I would say that so one of the distinction that I would make, just kind of, in my own personal journey, but even the work with that I do with my clients, it's like, so value add is important to me. What value do I bring? Um, and and it's only valuable, if someone accepts it or wants it or desires it. It's not, it's like, well, if I think it's valuable, I would say that the majority of my, let's say from uh, puberty till probably mid to late 20s, um, I I purely sought approval, and it was a subconscious attraction. It was, oh my God, either they show some interest in me, and in most of my journey, I was very susceptible to someone taking an interest to me. That was, I felt such low value internally that it was like, oh, they they find something interesting in me, then how do I garner their approval? Um, and then after getting emotionally and psychologically annihilated by that, and I'll tell you where that really showed up, which is, I'm not proud to say, but I was a narcissist dream come true when I was doing my clinicals. I mean, when I got narcissistic clients, and they, wow, man. Wow. I mean, that's all they had to say. And then I was addicted to like seeking their approval and just like, wow, he does see how smart I am. Wow. And I mean, they just like could pull my fucking strings. And I
Isn't
can,
that kind of common though for everybody? Isn't that like a
I think
almost
so.
default home base?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think, yeah. And I can remember, and you know, when I did clinicals, we had to videotape our sessions, and I had this particular guy. I can still see his face, and and you take these videos into your clinical group, which is 10 or 12 people, you know, and of course I'm just so goddamn proud of the work that I'm doing because this guy's just like, wow, you're the and my supervisor's like, do you not see how he's manipulating me? And I just are manipulating you. And I remember just like, what do you mean? Like how what like and like I was so, the Dunning-Kruger effect, like I was just so blind and so offended. And to the point, and this is a true story, I can't believe I'm disclosing this, but it's, 30 years ago. I was not aware that he had not paid me in like 2 months. And like,
You were getting
so,
payment enough.
dude, I was like, free cocaine, man.
Tell me you
And
love me.
And that's what, and my supervisor was like, I noticed like you're not collecting payment from him. And I'm like, what? And he's like, the dude's not paying you. And I'm just like, what is going on? And of course, he's going back home and he's telling his wife that he's a fucking hero and his therapist thinks that he's the greatest thing ever. And I'm just like, golly gee, I'm the best therapist ever. I mean, it just, just and so finally my supervisor was like, you have to confront him on paying you, like he's got to pay you. And that's when the panic set in. Like, wait, what? I have to cut off.
You made me think of this song, this lyric by The Maine. It's one of my favorite songs of
Oh,
all time.
how painful is this going to be? All right,
Are
go.
you ready? Listen to these lyrics. You think I'm ugly, don't you? And I know you hate my body, and blah, 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 blah. And then the chorus says, am I pretty? Do people like me yet? Is there a party? Am I invited? It's such a pity no one adores me yet. And it goes on and on. Am I pretty? Am I pretty? Am I good enough? You know, that kind of thing. And it's like when you hear that, especially sung appropriately, it's like, ugh, you just feel that pain because everybody wants to feel like they're attractive to somebody. And yet there's that insidious, like, I'm not there yet. I'm not good enough. There's all that self-doubt.
Oh yeah, and it was, there were several events and my my clinical supervisor, he tore me apart, but then thankfully put me back together again. And and really was, and I remember him saying, and I was kind of even blind to this because he wonderful, wonderful man, absolutely brilliant clinician, and like very thin, very put together, almost a Mr. Rogers type. He was, and this was when I was in Dallas, and he 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 asked me to stay after one of our sessions one day, and he was like, he called me Jeffrey, just in his southern Jeffrey, Jeffrey, and I always knew like shit, like I don't know what's about to happen, but and he goes, Jeffrey, one day you'll be a brilliant therapist if you stop trying to be me and start being you. And of course, I didn't have a fucking clue what he was talking about, and I'm like, oh, brilliant. Hey, okay.
Hung up on that word.
And what was funny, Joe, is I I dressed like him. Like I even like started like developing this southern drawl. Like
You should do an entire therapy session in that voice sometime,
I
like
don't know if
a
I
new
can pull
patient.
it. It's been a minute, but I'll see if I can like pull it. And and it took me probably, I don't know, 3 years before that finally like, oh, this is what he's talking about. And it was through that process where, and then it was like, okay, now I have to let go of being, just a personification of him, which was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. And then the vulnerability of, well, fuck, then, what? And I remember the first thing is like I started wearing jeans and like kept some slacks in the car just in case I panicked and was like, nope, can't pull it off today. Maybe tomorrow. And then the first time that I cussed in a session, like I had a full-blown panic attack. Like, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't and now it's like every other word out of my mouth. Um, and so that's kind of where that solidified for me was, okay, the risk to do this. And again, I'm not the right therapist for everybody, right? I'm not vanilla. Like I'm what the kids may say spicy. Like some people are like, fuck him, he's an asshole. And, you know, but it's like, and then I started to see, and then I started to affect clients. and then I started to see value. And and I did this, and I'm gonna go premature on my prompt. Um,
Oh,
but I found I don't even remember where I came across this, but it was an exercise of asking people the question, what is it like to be on the other end of me? Did we talk about this already?
dude, you hit me with that 20 some years ago. You
Yeah.
literally, in almost a very self-reflective time in your life, like you were trying to figure some stuff out, and you asked me that, and I think you had asked other people. You were at a point where you needed some serious evaluation, and when you pulled that on me, like where I had to answer that, I immediately just thought of the blinding value this is for me. Like, am I vulnerable enough to ask that question to somebody else? Like, I don't want to, maybe I don't want to know somebody's clear answer. So, yes, that has stuck with me ever since.
Yeah, and that has, in terms of the process of vulnerability and authenticity, the vulnerability of saying, what's it like to be on the other end of me? Now I've since added to that, and give me the last 10%. Give me that part that you don't want to say. That's the part I need. I don't need the part that you're comfortable saying. I need that part that you're like, I ain't fucking telling him this. Like, that's the part that I really need to hear from you because the eye cannot see itself. And the first stage of it, though, Joe, was exactly what you're saying. Like, because I just got butthurt. It was like, the first. I've been doing this for I don't know how many years, but the first iteration of it was getting over hurt feelings. Like getting over hurt feelings for people answering the question that I asked them. Like that's how emotionally juvenile I was. And 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 then the what I came to realize was the more it stung, the more valuable it was. Regardless of the person's motive. And I've asked people before that I probably shouldn't have asked that were just intending to be hurtful. And they used a rusty spoon. They did not use a scalpel. But there was still like, fuck, that still hurts the way that a truth that I need to hold on to. And so that the authenticity emerged from not being reactive. Okay, they're simply answering the question that I asked them to do. Can I ask that question? Can I get the information and not lose myself in it? And then how congruent am I? How congruent is the person that I want to be to the feedback that I'm getting?
And isn't it true that the closer you are to that person or the more respect you have for them, that's it's going to carry more weight? For example, I, as a business consultant, as somebody who helps people try to find their way professionally, and so you're going to have some customers who like you and don't like you, some clients, some patients, whatever field of business you're in. And we love to just brush those off. Oh, everybody likes me except that one person, so that's the outlier, dismiss it. And I've always taught people because I needed to do this myself. If somebody thought that, if somebody said that, it came from somewhere. Maybe part of the responsibility is theirs, but it happened. I have to assume that's real. And if it was something that negative, I offended somebody, I did something that I didn't want to do, I need to own that. And when that happened from very close personal friends or colleagues, you want to defend that. Like that hurts. That's not true. I don't want to hear that. But when you really allow that to cut you more deeply and you really accept that, I mean, that's where you can improve. And I hate it, but I have learned to at least want to work through it to get to the other side of being better.
I can tell you that the first practice that I joined in Dallas, it was we were in Plano, snooty little part of Dallas. And like, I was pretty proud of myself, even though I knew I had no idea what I was doing. but we had this receptionist, and she was the spunkiest little thing, and she gave me shit all the time. And I remember one day she turned around and looked at me and said, "Do you ever stop talking?" And I was like, "Look here, you little bitch. Do you know who you're talking to?" And but there was like, there was some clients where she was checking some clients out, and fact of the matter is mostly no, I don't ever stop talking. And I remember walking back to my office and I was like, God damn it, she's right. And she we became she became my ally. I mean, I didn't say anything for a while. I just kept listening when she'd give me shit. And it's like, okay, like, and I remember sitting down with her one day, after we had really gotten to know each other, and our 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 relationship had evolved mostly beyond that. But saying like you have been one of the most significant influences in helping me refine myself because you don't give a fuck, and you have just shot me straight. And she was a little bit, and I'm like, no, no, no. I mean, and I want you to know that you are, I don't hear a lot of voices, but you have become a trusted voice that when I'm out of alignment, like you you hit me hard enough. You don't ever hit me too hard. Sometimes it feels like too hard. And again, that was just one of those serendipitous little things that I just kind of stumbled into and was like, I am getting the most valuable feedback. And I don't even have to seek it out. I don't even have to, it just was one of those things that was just this profound epiphany that really just got me addicted to feedback. I can't get enough feedback. It's just,
So you did that to me one time, and you may not even remember this,
oh shit.
but it was just a knife to the chest. But it literally is exactly as you said. It's a voice I still hear. There's one phrase you uttered years and years and years and years ago that was so true, and gosh, I can't even say it offended me because it was so true. But when you like somebody, you respect them. Again, you're looking to be attractive to them, not unattractive. And so, in that moment, when she turned around and said, "Do you ever stop fucking talking?" Like you had to feel this small in some regard. Like, wow, am I that
Oh,
much of an ogre? So you, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, this is what you said to me
It's
one
one
day,
of those.
Jeffrey. You I don't know what we were talking about, but I was obviously verbose and excited, and you just kind of shook your head and kind of says, "God, you are exhausting." You said that to me. You are exhausting. I will never forget that moment, nor those words, because it was so fucking true. And to this day, I have to fight that. Like I know when it's like, okay, just shut up. It's you gotta reciprocate here. So there you go.
Well, you're welcome, and I'm sorry. Because sometimes it could be a little bit more delicate. Um, yeah, okay, so where are we? What are we, what?
Well, you have not yet told me a story of when you really
Oh, yeah, I
were
was trying to
attracted
avoid
to
that.
somebody and you had to kind of work into being attracted. You were in that feedback loop. I would love to hear when it was the most charged you can remember.
So the first thing that comes to mind was I, okay, let me do backwards. Early in my 20s, I had a guy that he was way out of my league, and he kind of sought me out, and wanted to mentor me. And he was a big fucking deal. Like he was, uh, I think he was a bank president at the time. Not that that's anything, but he was like a leader's leader. And he he sought me out and wanted like literally like I'd like to mentor you. I see some potential in you and I'd like to mentor you. And I I just remember like, oh yeah, yeah, well, of course, like yeah, okay. Uh and I remember like I met with him one time. He his initial he wanted to go through Stephen Covey's Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, which has become one of my Bibles in since then. Um, but we met one day and we're having coffee and he's expecting to, I don't know, he had given me some like I want you to read these three chapters, whatever it was. And so we get there and we sit down and we're having coffee and I'm just like, and this is before I met my assistant in Dallas that told me to shut the fuck up. So I'm sure it's just gibberish. I'm just talking and talking and talking. He's like, okay, all right, and he's gracious and he's like, okay, well, how about can we get into the book a little bit, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. Did you read what I asked you to read? Yeah, I read. Yeah, I'm fucking lying up my ass. I don't, because it's like, but I'm so blinded by my own insecurity right now that I don't even recognize what's happening. I'm buying my own bullshit. And he's like, are you wanting this? Are you wanting me to mentor you? Oh yeah, absolutely. Like for sure. Okay, because I mean, my time is valuable. I mean, I'm willing, and I remember in that moment, I'm like, well, your time is valuable. Like, not even recognizing I'm fucking, I mean, I have this like golden opportunity in front of me that is catalytic to me developing. And it's just like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, And I remember like vividly leaving and like, well, that dude, who does he think he is? Like, well, he thinks he is exactly who he is, you know. And I remember, the next time, like I didn't show up. And again, this is before cell phones or any of those kinds of things. So it's not, this is first of all, it's just a dick move, but it's like, but then how long does he sit and wait? And then, finally gives up and then, has to go home and call from the landline and leave him all of that. It was a very different time. And, I remember him saying like, I'll give this one last try. Like I'll give it one last try. And same thing, I don't even think I called him back. And has zero recognition of my total zero authenticity. Didn't know who the fuck I was, didn't, and like subsequently could not, was incapable of vulnerability, incapable of saying, you intimidate the shit out of me, and God, I hope I can do this. I'm not sure that, but I couldn't even be that honest with myself
So
at
it was
that.
because of your insecurity, you felt unworthy of that and just didn't know how you would handle it.
Didn't even know, had no, and that goes
Mm.
back to some deeper childhood issues, but yeah, it was just like, so then I self-sabotage, but then make it look like he's being unreasonable or those kinds of things. And it's one of my, it's one of my biggest regrets of that I squandered such an incredible opportunity, the way that I squandered such an incredible opportunity. And once I realized what a fuck up I was, there's no way to make amends. Like it just all of those different kinds of things. So that's kind of the one side of it. I had another opportunity where I met a guy and he had a wealth of knowledge. Um, and kind of approached him, and was wanted wanted him to mentor, well, posed it as I'd really like for you to mentor me, but I was seeking his approval. Like it wasn't alignment. It was just like, hey, will you like me? Hey, will you like me? I bet you'd really be able to help me out. So the intensity of that, and I can still remember it. And I remember him like I think I'd sent him an email. I think email had been invented by then, and he called me back and he was like, "What? I don't even understand really what you're talking about." And he's like, and I'm like, "No, I just really think like you have a lot to offer." It was just it was me sucking up to see what he might be able to do for me.
So were you trying to be more attractive? Like,
Oh yeah. I mean, I
just
was like peacock feathers and like thinking I looked all cool and like slapping and it was total ridiculousness. And because I wanted I wanted something from him, like specifically. Like it wasn't like I could articulate to him, hey, I've seen you in this context, and that's a skill that it wasn't anything like that. It's like, oh, you're a fucking big deal, and I'd like to be close to a big deal. And he's like, yeah, whatever, dude. Like he was a little bit more uh cordial than that, but not a lot. I mean, it was kind of like once we ended the phone call, after I got over being butthurt and saying, well, he's just a dick, it was like I didn't offer him anything. I didn't offer him like this is specifically what I'm looking for from you, and if it's something that sort of thing. Um, and it was like, it was like getting dumped by. It was like asking the prettiest girl at the prom if she'd like to dance, and she's like, "Ew, get away from me!" Like,
But
what?
see, at those ages, whether it's, professional, occupational, relational, we just don't have the skills. I think that's where you are completely defaulting more to those biological essences. And I'll give you an
Well, I think,
example.
except I've made it an intentional effort to not let my kids like I had rules for my kids like my when my girls went off to school, like rule number one was by the end of the first week they had to know everybody on the dorm floor. They had to know their name, where they're from, where their what their major was, and you go seek that out. Like you're the one that goes in and says, "Hi, I'm Taylor, I'm from Evansville, I'm studying, what are you?"
That's an incredible move. I love that.
It was it was huge. Like it was
I
huge.
wish people would make me do that.
Well, I can try. The other thing is they had to go through Rush, and they had to, and it's like I'm not. You don't have to pledge a sorority or fraternity for my son, but you do have to go through the process of where seeking approval and acceptance consumes every part of your entire being, and you have to learn to control that. And then, once they, I don't fucking remember how many rounds there were, those kinds of things, but it's like, let's talk about it. What house do you want to be in and why? Well, these girls are really, and it's like, really? It just, and kind of help them get through that process. And then they ultimately ended up joining sororities, and my son fraternity, although the school that he went to, fraternity was like his fraternity was the engineering program. That program was small enough that it served that purpose. Um, but and I agree with you, but I also wanted to give my kids as much of an advantage
For sure.
over those natural processes as possible. And it worked out. It worked
So,
out.
so I do want to tell you about how Tracy and I met because there's some humor and some reality in that I think is useful. But you made me think of yesterday. I spent 10 hours standing in a grocery store vestibule. As I'm one of the things I'm doing right now, I'm the what am I? The resource development officer at a regional food bank. So we serve 33 counties. We moved 16 million pounds of food last year. It's a really big organization, and this is a holiday food drive. And so you're sitting there with strangers coming in. Imagine the Salvation Army sitting there ringing a bell, right? So we have a table set up, and it's a holiday food drive. And again, I'm an introvert, so I'm like, this is just torture. This is just torture upon torture. And as the staff member, I have volunteers, and so I'm supposed to be the role model. I'm showing them how to do this, which is, yeah, you can laugh. It is appropriate. And so, after stumbling through some interactions, I just started pretending I was an extrovert. Like a guy walked in with an IU hat, just like you, and I used your line. I said, "Hey, that's it. I use a football school now, aren't they?" He came over and we spent 5 minutes talking. He gave me his whole life history. I graduated from IU in 1960, blah blah. And other people, old guys are wearing their Vietnam hats. So I'm like, hey, like to tell me about your thing there. I was in the Air Force right out of school. Oh, where you? And we would get into these 10 or 15-minute conversations, and it was just unbelievably fruitful to give somebody like them a chance to have this conversation. They just went to buy a fucking loaf of bread or something, and all of a sudden they're sharing their life story and gelling with somebody who's interested in them. I'm literally showing interest in them. And it's such a lesson to me. Like, why don't I do this more often? But it was 10 hours of starting out as pain and getting very blissful because now I'm looking for these opportunities. But let me go back to the biology of how mate selection and sex signaling really works for most of us, period. Just because at some primal level we know we have to be attractive enough to somebody for them to want to choose to be with us. Like that is, no matter if you're willing to say it out loud, think it, like that is happening in your body. So I walk into this job that is, I'm probably 19 years old, and it's my first day on the job. And it was Tracy's first day or first week on the job. And it happens to be at a retail, store. And so she's at this corner training as a cashier. And there's a group of ladies over there, and I'm just kind of walking to the back to clock in and meet my supervisor or whatever. And I just turned and looked at her, and out of a sea of dozens and dozens of people, hundreds in the store, it was just like you would see in a movie, like a beam of light shining down from heaven on her. She looks up at me, we make eye contact, and it's just there. It's just there. Like we both locked eyes. And for the next month, because I was the manager of this department right in front of the cashiers, I'd be peeking around the corner to see if I can see her, and then she's looking at me, and we both look away and we hide again. We literally didn't talk for a month. We did that for a month. I later found out, Jeff, she had invited her parents in and just pointed me out. That's him. That's the guy. She had never even talked to me yet. That's the guy. So here's what
That's
sealed.
the guy or we don't know, just that's the
That's the
guy.
guy.
That's
It,
fabulous.
two introverts, right? Like, how would this ever?
Yeah.
We could have been the only two people on the planet. We would still hide from each other. But here's what happened. I don't know who did this first, but one day she walks into the store not working, and instead of her normal like sweater and jeans or whatever, she's wearing a black, like waistless shirt. So her stomach is showing in this black mini skirt that there's no way she could even bend over in this skirt, you know, and like that. And she just happens to walk into my aisle, right? Looking like
Right.
that. Similarly, one day I'm at the gym, sleeveless tank top, just jacked, pumped up, everything. And of course, that's the day I decide, hey, I should probably go get something at the store where Tracy happens to be a cashier and
Uh,
go through her line.
yes, sir.
So look, I mean, look, and we still, I mean, people still do that if you're 30, 40, 50. Like you're putting on your best dress shirt, you're doing this, you care how you look. And I only say that because 35 years later, four kids and four grandkids later, like that's the next step that it took for us to almost try to bait the trap. Is this person interested in me? Am I going to get any kind of reaction when I'm being quasi vulnerable? then we ended up, talking, and we sat together at a group. Everybody went out to eat one night after a shift, and all of a sudden it's 2 in the morning, and like we're a couple.
So did somebody, what did you like, touch pinkies or something? Or like, what was the first romantic gesture?
So we did
Or just
walk.
jump straight to sex. Like, let's
No,
go
no, no,
fuck in the
no,
back.
no,
Yeah, I
not
didn't
not
think
not
so.
at all. You
I
you know
didn't, yeah.
Tracy. You know Tracy. We literally like just walked. It was 2 in the morning when she decided I better get home. And of course, her dad was just pulling out of the driveway to come look for her. But just walking and talking, and just I don't know if we touched pinkies. I don't know if we held hands like that first night. It was just like walking in the
Oh,
moonlight and
yes.
and
The
talking.
intensity. Yes.
But I mean, I don't have to give you much of a narrative. Like, that moment. When that has happened to you in the past, and I I don't know. Like, it doesn't always last, but at least that's a strong
Sure. Yeah,
impetus.
it is the spark. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
So nothing like that for you. You never.
Well, okay. So again, all of it was predicated by someone showing interest in me. And I do remember that my ex and I did have a night like that. And I it was a similar kind of thing where I don't even remember, like, I ended up at her place, and she's like same sort of thing, like, I mean, we're both away at college, and I remember like desperately needing to say like something like I love you a lot, like like some version of that. And I remember her saying like, it's kind of late. And I'm like, yeah, it is. You want to take a walk? And like, so then we go for this like very lengthy walk. And of course, I can't push any words out of my mouth. And I remember like us getting back and her like, so like, is there something you wanted? And so, and I still can't even grunt like, like I can't even be like primitive. And I remember her saying, of course, we were steeped in evangelical Christianity at this point in time. And I remember her saying, well, I'm really going to thank God for you tonight. And I remember like that being like the enough bait on the hook that,
That was a bid. That was a legitimate bid.
yeah. And
She was showing approval.
yeah. So I think, I drove home in a manic episode and I don't know, cuddled with my roommate or something just because I was like, yes, I think she likes me. And
So,
uh,
so do you, now that you are 50 some years old, do you feel less apt to be vulnerable? Or like, how do you, knowing what you know as a therapist, like, how do you navigate those waters now?
knowing that I am that vulnerable, like knowing that. And I have it's one of those things, it's a little bit counterintuitive because it's whether it be a client that like, oh, look at me getting high on their praise, it's I would like to say it's something that I have been able to diffuse, but it's actually the opposite of that. I've had to develop a hyper awareness of it. And then when it starts to affect me, um, then it's like, oh, it's affecting me, and I have to resist it. Same thing in dating. Um, post divorce, it's like I become like a 7-year old again. That's just like, oh my God, I think she likes me, and like, dude,
I love that. That's
I-
good.
it's not good. It's just not. Uh, so I have to manage that very, very intensely. Um, it's you
What's
know,
good about it is you still have the ability to feel the fear of vulnerability. Because you can't, that's what I wanted to get at. I wanted to see if you were like all scarred over as a therapist, that you're just like looking for the game and that sort of thing.
no, and mostly now since I've been in Chicago, like I did improv, did stand up, do those kinds of things. I seek it out now. I seek it out to, not that that emulates it perfectly, but it is, it. I mean, doing stand up for the first time's a bit of vulnerability.
I want to talk to you about that, by the way, because yeah, you got potential there.
Uh, okay. Um, so it has to stay on my radar screen.
Yeah.
I I had a dating experience recently. I'm not really dating. I'm just kind of like trying to figure this shit out, and I, met this woman. I thought, okay, here's some potential. Like I felt like I had it properly engaged, and then it just like all of a sudden it was like like taking off, and it's like it's I've lost control of it. Like I can't I don't have control of it. And
So I knew a guy at one point who was in his 60s, and I think he'd been married several times and just decided, I'm never going to get married again. I'm just going to date. And he said this. He said, I just love falling in love. And then he wants to like do that again and again and again because of that oxytocin and all the like you just that it is literally like a free fall as you just expressed it.
yeah, and I think there is, I don't I don't like it. I mean, the falling part, it's the hammer, slamming against the ground of like, now this is over. And I don't, there's things now that I know that I want in a relationship that go far beyond the falling in love, but I still have to work way harder than I would like to make sure that I pace it correctly. I'm reading the room, not just high on the dopamine and the oxytocin and like, oh, she thinks I'm cute. Like it just, I
But
got to
that
kind of
is the
work.
perfect bookend to that constant pinging of social response. It's a dynamic interpersonal response because you don't stay there in that free falling, risking, face planting moment. Like you develop a relationship and then you have to decide if this is the person I want to stay with. We want to start a
Right.
family. Like you still have to have that dynamic of vulnerability. And if you wall it off, like that's the death of your marriage, unless you repair it. And so you have to be willing to do. I'm going to stand by the definition that to be appropriately vulnerable is to be okay living in constant fear. I have to risk this conversation. I have to risk vulnerably initiating a conversation or initiating affection or, you know, putting myself out there, asking somebody, what's it like being on the other side of me? Like those kinds of things that you probably ask clients to do, couples to do, if you're not doing them yourself in relationships, you've decided vulnerability is too much of a risk and you just stopped risking it.
Right. I agree completely. And I've developed enough interpersonally that going out, like going out on a date, that part of it, that's not the hard part for me. The hard part is like putting the motherfucking brakes on, and not thinking everyone's my soulmate and like, oh, I can't live without you, and like, those sorts of things. It's like you use the word responsibly. It's like that's what I have to be like uncomfortably honest with myself about. It's like, and so it's like, I mean, I have rules. If I go out on a date, like first date's coffee and it can only last 45 minutes.
I like
And
that
it's
too. I
like,
remember you said that.
yeah, it's just, I have to practice the same rules that I encourage my clients to do. It's like, really enjoyed it. Thanks for, it's like I can't go out to a fucking nice restaurant in Chicago and have 3 bottles of wine. I'll be fucking married the next day. Like I gotta know my limitations, right? Like, dude, my 74th marriage in as many weeks.
It happens. So you already hinted at what your prompt is going to be. Explain that a little bit more completely so people can do that as homework.
I again, we're talking about attractiveness and the three-legged stool or the cycle, the vulnerability, the authenticity, the value add. And I do believe that the point of entry is vulnerability and stepping out into the unknown. I think a great way to do that is this prompt of asking, I would say the first time I would ask three people, what's it like to be on the other end of me? That's because that's the risk, right? Now I'm putting it out there and I'm risking them answering the question that I've asked them. And that was a bit that was a tough one for me. It's like, fucker, what do you mean? I'm like, oh yeah, you just answered the question. And what I would always do is I would tell people and respond however you would like. If you'd like to meet and have a conversation, we can do that. You want to send me an email, whatever's the safest way for you to be as honest with me as you can be. I'd love it in writing just so I have it to reflect on, but it's entirely up to you. And then the first step in that is not getting butthurt, controlling my emotional reaction to this. Not getting too high, not getting too low, just processing the information and controlling my reactivity.
I'm writing this down. Joe, you are exhausting. Love, Jeffrey.
Jeez.
That's what you think of me. What's it like to be on the other end of me? Oh, Joe, you are exhausting.
I think you're taking that out of context, but hey, maybe it's
No, I was being exhausting in that moment. And that is something that I now appropriately try to gauge.
yeah.
So my prompt is on the social psychology side, something that you had mentioned in a previous series, the fact that our facial expressions are just infinite combinations of muscular movements and our mirror neurons are so evolutionarily designed to pick up on those and the body language. I think anybody that you're interested in becoming a friend with, becoming a professional colleague in closer proximity with, somebody that you're interested in romantically, I think you very quickly, as you said appropriately, short first meeting, etc., don't handle all of this online through texting and that sort of thing. Immediately, as soon as it's appropriate and safe, be with that person and just start seeing what that dance is like. I promise you, it will not fail you in terms of you getting those gut level instincts of who this person really is. Because we can hide behind a keyboard, we can put our best foot forward,
100%.
but then I do like what you added on to that. You also have to then measure out those interactions also appropriately because you can see what you want to see in those initial exchanges and still become a little bit blinded with your own blind spots. So anyway, at least start that process and get deeper and deeper into some engagement with a person because I just, as we talked about before, it's the world we live in where we're just too busy. It's easier to do it all digitally, and I think that can create some weirdness when you do end up seeing each other more in person.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, just the tragedy that is online dating and like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like crazy.
So in our next episode in this series of making sure you're attractive, are you going to go into those next two legs of the stool, or do you have other aspects?
No, we'll develop authenticity,
Okay.
to, because it's like authenticity, like, but it's like, no, I have specific meaning about that and how how to make that like an actual process that you are engaged in versus just, I mean, the era that we live in right now, it's like people are assholes and they're like, well, I'm just being authentic. And it's like, well, you're authentically an asshole. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how to be, how to show up as you are but also positively impact the relationships and circumstances that you engage in.
Good. We'll do it next time. And I'll try to bring up less biology because every time I do, you just start closing down and falling asleep. You love to get back into
I don't
the
know. I like the
okay.
biome.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there are some amazing social science frameworks and theories around relationship building and attractiveness.
Well, and it's like
Those
you,
four
and my
stages.
experience in that is there's so many.
Hmm.
It's just like once you open that Pandora's box, it's like, fuck, how do I stuff this thing back in there? And this that'll be a good part of our discussion to expand that more, but also make sure that we don't go past the point of diminishing return to where now it's like, well, what the fuck do we do? We've got so many options.
Yeah, I think it's just valuable to see each discipline in those founding professionals obviously bring their own personality traits and their own experiences into it. And we're just heuristically defining the same thing in different ways, like the
Yep.
facets of a diamond. So I think it's useful, but eventually you do come down on, okay, this is how I synthesize that, and this is how I operate in it. So,
Yes, I
all right,
think that,
man.
yeah, we'll keep hammering against each other on that front.
All right. Appreciate that. I think it was a great, useful session. So we will see you next time. Jeffrey Stuckey. Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
Work on my Texas accent.
Yeah, work
Jeffrey.
on that, please.
You
Yeah.
kind of look, you sounded like, who was that Attorney General? Jeff Sessions. Like little Jeffrey.
Jeffrey.
Okay. Next time, guys, we'll see you in Human. Have a good week.